Okay, I am back and rested so I can function a little bit better today. So in this video, I'm going to show you just a couple of things that maybe I want to highlight as far as making video, very short video in Photoshop, because it's not fully designed to do very long videos, but if you want to do a quick intro or you want to make a quick little video, it's a good place to do it. So in here, I do have this example where I have put the title, added the things that you would need in order to do your project for video. Okay, so you need to have multiple videos, a couple videos, 7, I believe, images. So kind of keep that in mind. They do need to be photographs. Okay, you can add cartoons or something like that, but for the most part, I would like you to try to constrain yourself to images, because if you need to edit them, this is Photoshop and I want to make sure that you have that ability to edit them. Okay, so in here where I left off last week is you will have a title. Now notice I have this title. This is the only thing on the timeline on this line, okay, because I want motion. Anytime you apply specific motion and including keyframes, you do need to have that on a separate layer, okay, and that's what I was again struggling with in my total lack of sleep on Monday last week. I had a total forgetful moment where I couldn't think about it being on separate lines. So if you want, say, this text and then this text both moving, they do need to be on separate lines. And notice at the end I have even another separate line. So inside here, each one of your images should be moving in some way. Now, one way to get them to move would be to go down here and make motion pan and zoom. Sometimes that works, a lot of times that works, but sometimes it doesn't, okay? So inside here, I'm going to go down to this one's fine. This one was custom as well. This one is a pan and zoom. Okay, this one, okay, if I go in here, and this one says pan and zoom, and actually it's zooming exactly where I want. This one is not moving, okay? So if I go in here and I say pan and zoom, let's see what happens for this one. That's fine, because I want it to focus in on the German Shepherd because she's the grand puppy. Then if I go to this one and I apply a pan and zoom, you will notice that it kind of zooms in on the red one. That's not what I want. Now, if I go to the beginning of this, and I'll zoom in on my timeline so that you can kind of see the image. I'm on this image here. And if I'm on this image and I want it to, I have a transition in here. Let me remove that transition for just a minute. I'm going to just trash it just so you can see it a little bit better. Okay, I'll put it back in here in a minute. And I'll go to this one and I'm going to trash that one too, just so we can see this. So in between here and here, what I want is I want it to pan in on this dog. So what I'm going to do at the beginning with that, make sure that your pan and zoom is on. I'm going to actually move this up, okay? And then, okay, notice it's still zooming in over onto the red dog. Her name's Lucy. And what we're going to do is we're going to move this maybe, again, I need movement. So I'm going to maybe move it up this way. So I did that at the beginning and at the end. And now you'll notice that it is focusing. Why? Because I had the playhead at the beginning. I moved it to where I wanted it to start. And then I moved it to the playhead to the end. And then I moved it again where I wanted it to start. So that gives enough movement that that image is actually moving. That is one way of doing it. Okay, I'm going to give you another way. So in this one, let's do a pan and zoom. And I decide that, oh, it is zooming in on her, but maybe not enough for my liking. So I, this time, have decided that I want to use keyframes. And I typically like to use keyframes. And you can do this in Adobe Premiere as well. And you can do it all on one line. That's where I was having a moment, because I do also teach Adobe Premiere. So inside of here, I'm going to take this and I'm going to drag it. Now I can't put it on any of those other lines because if I put it on those other lines, they have stuff with keyframes. So notice that there's 2 black lines if I move here, but if I go in between here, basically this image now is on its own line. There's nothing else on that line. Okay, so I do want you to realize that that is on its own line. That's one way to move it to its own line. So I'm going to open this up and I am going to use keyframes this time in order to make the move. Now notice there is already keyframes in here on transform because we added the pan and zoom. Okay, so what we can do with those now, we can either clear those out or we could click on it. Okay, and we can edit it. Okay, so maybe by about here, I want it to be totally zoomed in. So right here, I'm gonna click here and make sure your playhead is on that. And I actually wanna move it down so I can really focus more on the dog. And I wanna zoom in just a little bit more and see all her ears and all her glory. So now I'm gonna check mark that and I'm going to zoom. You can see where it starts and where it ends. And maybe I didn't even really want the girl, which that's my daughter, but maybe I don't want her in there as much. So I can actually go to the beginning, make sure you're on the keyframe, and you can kind of, you know, maybe zoom out a little bit and then check mark it. And you can, again, see that it zooms in on Little Miss Bear there. Okay, so those are just 2 ways that you can add movement. Because in your project, I do not want any still images just sitting there. They have to be moving somehow, some way. And it doesn't just have to be fluid like that. Maybe, and again, don't do this one's gonna be silly because this is kind of zoomed in a little too much. But I could go over here and I could add a new keyframe. Adding keyframes is over here. And maybe right here, I wanted it right here to zoom down. Again, this is going to be silly, but there might be reasons that you want to do this. So it would start here, it would go down, and then it would go back up to wherever I left that keyframe. Okay? You can have 20 keyframes in there if you want. You could have it kind of bouncing all around, especially if you had another background in there. I want you to be creative and mess around with this video a little bit because we will be doing a little bit more with this in Photoshop too. When you're done with your video, make sure that you have all the criteria that I asked for, and then make sure that you export that as an MP4. If you run into any issues, please don't hesitate to reach out.